make money.
Yeah. Okay, you guys
Barter
ready?
exchange, yeah, we're.
Okay, here we go. Well, welcome back to the Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Mark Hanf and Brian Burke. And when we cut to the second commercial break, we asked this trivia question. What board game reportedly is the most popular game in America? And today's trivia theme is board games. Does anyone know the answer to that?
Is it Monopoly?
No, it is not. A lot of people, that's what I thought
Not
too, but
Monopoly,
it's
huh?
not Monopoly. Anybody?
I would guess Scrabble.
Scrabble!
Oh.
Yes,
I was going to say, I don't have a clue.
the new man in the studio.
That was the last question.
Oh, right.
And that voice that you just heard was Brian Capehart, and Brian is president of Pacific Trade Exchange, and he's going to explain what is Pacific Trade Exchange. Brian, welcome to the Best of Investing.
Thanks for having me today, Edward.
Okay.
Pacific Trade Exchange is a indirect B2B trading exchange, otherwise known as a barter exchange. There's a few of us out here on the street.
Okay.
What we do is we make it possible for clients to utilize an alternative currency in order to indirectly trade with other members.
Okay.
Being that a restaurant buys advertising from, let's say, Marin Magazine. Instead of them using cash, they use restaurant gift certificates, for example. So in essence, they're trading on their cost of goods for that advertising.
Okay, and so they might get business that they might not otherwise get.
Guaranteed new business.
Okay.
Wow, how big a market is that, Brian?
As far as industry-wide?
Yeah.
Industry-wide, if you look at, go to a website called IRTA, International Reciprocal Trade Associations, they're banking it at 4% of our GDP, or right at $63 billion a year annually is done in trade.
Okay.
So that's how big the barter industry is, 4%. Wow, that's big.
But one thing I think you have to explain to the public here is that it is legal, and they get 1090. There are 1099s that get issued by the IRS. It's not some underground economy.
Right. That's funny you bring that up. A lot of times when we're meeting with a new client, you see the look in their face of, this is too good to be true. And that's usually when I'll chime in and say, at the end of the year, you're going to get a 1099 Schedule B, which is for your
The
barter
value of the
exchange,
service, yeah.
So you still pay taxes on the revenue that we bring you.
Okay, and potentially though they'll get the tax deduction if they're using the trade for their business. So a business that needs, a plumber specifically in their own building that they use for writing off on their taxes would be a deduction anyway.
Exactly.
Okay.
I'm not an accountant, but typically anything you spend cash for on your business, it's a write-off, would be the same thing in trade.
Exactly, and I was explaining to Brian earlier, the other Brian Burke here, the type of business that you are in, and at first I was thinking, gosh, the kind of business Brian is in with raising money for investments in rental properties, there may not be a fit. But then Brian, you actually brought up the point.
Yeah, I said, we also have a real estate brokerage firm. So I said, in one respect, we could have a plumber work on our rental house, and in exchange, we could offer real estate brokerage services to someone selling a house, for example.
Exactly.
So it seems like it's multidisciplinary. It doesn't really matter what you do. If you exchange money for your services, you could utilize something like this.
And I'm going to give you a little plug here, Brian, because for a couple of reasons. First of all, your fee is only 5% compared to a lot of other companies that are 6%. But in theory, if there's just a specific situation where an electrician needs a plumber and a plumber needs an electrician, they don't need anybody else. But that's rarely the case, and especially if the plumber's bid is $1,000 and the electrician's bid is $10,000 because of the type of work. I mean, that's not an even trade. So your company acts as the brokerage,
Correct.
and it's sort of like its own currency.
We look at it as, in our company, we're trying to rebrand our business to be a little bit different, where we're a community of member businesses who indirectly trade amongst each other. I tell every one of my clients, it's not my exchange by any means, it's your guys' exchange. We're just managing it.
Yeah, and what would happen, I guess, is because I'm a member of your exchange, and so what I would do is if I needed a construction guy or if I needed a good restaurant or something, you have a directory, or I could just call you up because you offer that personal service.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how would I know if my business would be a good fit for that kind of service?
Well, typically I tell people to think about your margins. If you have a better than a 70% margin, you're doing great. For somebody, for example, when somebody says, hey, can we get some new computers? It's just not going to happen typically. because those computer resellers have a very small margin. That's not to say we don't do excess inventory deals at times, which in fact we're currently doing that right now.
Yeah.
But you know, if someone has a good margin, they have room for extra business, they're a good fit.
Especially if you're a labor service provider, like like
Exactly.
you mentioned, a plumber or an accountant or somebody who you're basically selling your time for money. That's an excellent fit, it would seem to me.
Oh.
Now, if you had to buy a lot of materials or things that go into what you're doing, I could see where you have some constraints there.
Exactly. It just comes down to what's called the liquidity of the dollar.
Yeah.
The example you just brought up, you know, construction, if you have to lay out a lot of cash. Well, if you were going to spend, let's use $1,000. If you were going to spend $1,000 on, let's say, printing, you can either write a check for that, or let's say that $1,000, we'll call you a handyman right now. You did a $1,000 job, but you know you had $600 in parts there. At the end of the day, you're still saving $400,
Yeah.
and we brought you the job. So it all comes down to people, what they can spend their trade on.
Is
how they
there-
can
But there's
reinvest
also
it.
a combination.
Yeah, I was
it
gonna say,
doesn't
is there
have
a
to be-
hybrid
There
where-
is, there is,
yeah.
but especially in that exact example with construction, where the guys, you know, the trade guy might say, "Listen, you know, I'll do the job for $1,000, but my materials are $600. You got to pay at least the $600 in cash."
Yeah, if it's
That's
something
still
they don't
good.
currently stock. I mean, that's how we look at it.
Yeah.
Because if that $1,000 job is going down at a restaurant they frequent, that restaurateur is going to say, look, people come in here, they eat our food, they leave, and we have to come out of pocket for that food, so why don't they pay us 30% every time they come in and eat? Some people would say, that sounds good, let's do it. That exchange won't be around. Managing clients' expectations and managing the way clients buy and sell, that's the key to having a very strong trading relationship
Yeah.
with your clients.
Yeah. And here's the funny thing. I was telling Brian earlier that a lot of people might think, well, you know, you deal in trade, they're going to inflate the currency type of thing. But in a couple of cases, it's been amazing. I've actually gotten bids lower on trade than if it was an all cash deal, just because it happened to be the human being I was dealing with just happened to be somebody who was willing to do it for a decent price.
More realistic.
Is
So
it
it's not
the
always-
general expectation that there's going to be some cost savings? Otherwise, am I missing something in how this works in theory? I mean, generally, otherwise, why wouldn't you just pay cash for the simplicity of it?
That's a good point. Let's say today if you need to spend, again, let's use $1,000. That's going to come out of your existing cash flow, what you do currently to generate that cash. Where the cash savings comes in, one, we're going to hand you a deal. We're going to say, here's somebody who's going to buy your product right now today for $1,000. So now you have a new deal there. You know the cost of that, let's say, was 30%, so $300. When you spend that $1,000 in trade, you just saved yourself about $700 because you're using
Yeah.
a different currency.
Well, who it really works really well for are, like, you know, the Raiders and the Warriors. They do it on trade because they'll have excess tickets, and once the game is over, those tickets were useless.
Yeah.
So it's better for them to throw them in the hopper in a trade company. So it's not just a mom and pop. I mean, there are trade organizations who have big ticket items like or you know, well-known companies like the Raiders and the Giants do it. I think the Giants do it also.
Oh yeah, I think they trade with one of my competitors over in the East Bay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think luxury suites, things like that.
Yeah. So it's, but again, the thing that's good about yours is, why don't you explain about how the 5% fee works?
It's pretty simple. A lot of times people think it's 5% of the transaction, being that we're gonna, you know, $1,000, we're gonna keep $5, but that's not it. We charge a
$50.
5%. Sorry. Yeah, who's your broker here? huh?
Yeah, $5 done. You know. Go ahead.
We charge 5% cash on every one of the transactions. So when you spend $1,000, your bill's gonna be $50, and that's where how those fees are generated. Typically, we'll charge a monthly service fee depending on the account as well, but the bread and butter are the transaction fees. And with that said, if you spend 6 months to a year on a trade exchange, you may have bought some great things like, let's say, Raider tickets or limousine trips. Then your accountant comes in, or maybe a wife, a partner, etc., and says, look, you just spent $10,000 last year, and you bought all this personal stuff. This doesn't make sense. We're not taking trade anymore, even if you had a 10% cost of goods. Where our company is a little bit different. When we work with clients, we schedule out exactly where they're going to be reinvesting the trade dollars. You can either spend trade dollars or reinvest them. Investing meaning you're going to get a return. I work diligently helping people place media buys buying things like wholesale beer for my restaurants, wholesale bread, wholesale wine, things are gonna absolutely be able to bring cash business in. So if that conversation, if it ever comes up, I can quickly look at the account, say you spent $10,000 in things you would have written a check for, and it brought back the cash.
Huh.
Solid.
Okay. Guys, we're going to cut to our third and final trivia question. And again, the theme is board games. What board game has various characters such as Queen Frosting, Lord Licorice, and Grandma Nut? The first three callers with the correct answer win a free 3-day, 2-night stay.
Come up with this stuff?
Yeah, I asked the kids. The first three callers with the correct answer win a free 3-day, 2-night stay at the Lighthouse Resort. Their website is lighthouse4fun.com. Call 888-912-1190. That's 888-912-1190 to answer this question. What board game has various characters such as Queen Frosting, Lord Licorice, and Grandma Nut? Call 888-912-1190. Make sure to include your name, address, and email address, and spell it out and speak slowly, and we will be right back. Good.
Awesome.
I hate my voice.
Just make sure
Nothing
when
you can do.
I know it's hard, but there's a temptation to talk like
I
this,
know.
and you just pretend that you're connected here, and you just pivot. That's all you have to do is just pivot.
I don't know. I don't have a clue. What is it?
Candyland.
So when
Yep. All right. Take care.
Hey, good
Brian,
meeting
it's nice meeting you.
It's a pleasure meeting
Take
you
care.
too. All right. Good luck. We'll see you again.
You know, mind if I mention you?
Yeah.
Okay. See, Kramer's a good example, right? He's a videographer. You might have a need,
thank you.
someone who's got a need for. He doesn't like to do weddings, but let's say for their website.
Mm-hmm. He used to be with my competitor, and he could call them and say, I need to get tap handles made. Sorry, we don't do that. Calls me, let's think about this. Auto body shop. So we turned around and got 350 tap handles
The auto body
made.
shop made it.
Yep.
That's a
Dan
great
brought in the
story.
material for him. Wants it. I can keep this one guy over here working every day for the next 3 days doing these and earn 150.
Well, because that's the thing is he's not going to lay off those guys for 2 days and then say, okay, come back. I had that a roofing situation when we owned a building across the street here, and it's like we needed a roof, but it's like I don't know if we really need because we're going to sell the building, and we got a bid of like $15,000, which was not too unreasonable, but we just weren't ready to pull the trigger. And the guy, the roofer called me like a week later, and he goes, Edward, listen. He goes, here's the deal. He goes, I don't have enough work right now. If I lay these guys off, I won't be able to get them back. I'll do it for $10,000.
Yeah.
And it was
That's how I got my cabinets built for my last house. Same thing. It was like, oh God, you guys are so expensive. Then literally within weeks, he said, I'm between projects. Look, let me just
That's
come
it.
down and I just want to keep busy.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Now the thing is, if you were in a trade organization, you could still do that, right? It doesn't have it doesn't have to be cash. In fact, the guy could say, listen, I'll do it all for trade.
Right.
Yeah.
This all comes down to where people are spending. My competitor, they try to do things all at 100%, like on construction and whatnot, and then you'll find out that they might talk somebody into doing 1 or 2 deals, and then they're not a client anymore.
Exactly.
And what I do is I'll work, because I am the guy in the middle when I've got to explain to a restaurateur why they're paying, say, 20%, 30% cash for a new roof, for example, and they give me the, people come to my restaurant. Well, I know these are incremental sales. You would have thrown away the food. He's not storing the shingles in his. I can come back with all those arguments, but I try not to. But then it just helps them understand that this is still a huge benefit. It's either you do it or you don't. So instead of talking someone into doing these big jobs like that, that's what my contractor. We're doing some pretty big contracting jobs right now.
And it's better to just and to do some cash and trade just to get the deal done rather than lose it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And what do you do if you can't find? Do you? I mean, if let's say I asked you for something and you just don't have it in the system and can't make it, then what do you do? Just say no, or do you push it on to a competitor, or what?
And that's funny because we're actually pretty good at calling people back and letting them know we don't have that.
Yeah.
Because it's either we find out 2 things: either we have it in the network, or we're gonna go after it because you've supplied us with a couple of bids. Because we work together on this one.
Yeah.
But then we come back and say, hey, we have a new client, he's ready to do your job, or here's what we have found, why it does not work for this industry. Because we don't claim to know everything.
And do you trade dollars with other organizations? No. Okay. Because a couple of them do.
Yeah, we do reciprocal.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah, I'll do
That-
reciprocal things, but that's going to a third account between the two, where some companies actually honor each other's currencies.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of honoring.
And that's they've tried that one before, and it just becomes a big mess.
Yeah, because I don't want a credit balance on my.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys ready?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm ready.
Good. Okay, so I go 4 seconds of silence here, and we got 9 minutes to go. Ready? Here we go. Welcome back to the Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, in the studio with Mark Hanf, and we have a guest, Brian Capehart of Pacific Trade Exchange, who is actually the sponsor of the show. We love that. Okay, here's the trivia question. What board game has various characters such as Queen Frosting, Lord Licorice, and Grandma Nut? Anybody?
Well, you got to have little kids to know the answer to that. It's Candyland.
Candyland, that's right. And I got to tell you that that's one of the most competitive games in my household. I am ruthless. Do not play Candyland with me. The kids end up
kids still do,
crying.
yes.
It's a mess, I'll tell you. Okay.
Great dad, right?
Yeah, you love it. Kids love me. Okay, Brian, you are with Pacific Trade Exchange, and we've been talking about the various aspects of your company. And Mark, I think you had a
Well,
great
yeah.
question.
So you started out, Brian, by saying you're more of a B2B exchange, which I guess means like as a consumer, I wouldn't just log on to the site and be able to like engage with your clientele or barter, because unless I have a business, I need to
Something
have
to
something
offer, yeah.
something to offer. So what is there an industry that like is the most popular type of industry, or is there a group of industries that are kind of like the most popular participants in this exchange?
Well, your foundations typically are going to be your media, your restaurants, and your travel, because everybody